Welcome, everybody. I'm Gary Goldberger, and I'm moderating this panel on the deal-making process. Producers, showrunners, actors, directors, agents, lawyers. Who's in charge here? Whatever that means is my end to that. We have a really good panel today of people in different parts of the business who have been very successful and accomplished. So I think we'll be able to have a good discussion. We have, and I'm gonna have to introduce now and throw this around because my list is in a different order than everybody is sitting, but showing being nimble, I'm gonna give a go at this. Sandy Smolin is right here, who is a film and TV director. Chad Fitzgerald, who is a lawyer and a partner at Kinsella, Weitzman, Iser, Kump, and Alderser. Harold Brook, who is founder of The Point Media. Harrison Kordestani, who is a producer and distributor with Main Street Film. And Nessim Hassan, who is the head of New Films International. I think I got that right. Todd Shepard is not yet here. I'm hoping he'll come. If not, then he will be the empty seat down at the end with his name outside of it. There are no real rules. I mean, I'll ask questions. The panelists will talk. We'll try to cover a lot of areas. If you have questions, you're welcome to ask them. The only real rule about questions is please don't ask about a specific project, not because it may not be a wonderful question, but probably because the rest of the audience won't be that interested. But you're welcome to talk to people afterwards. So just want to try to keep it moving and get through all. But feel free to ask questions. Just raise your hands whenever you need to ask a question. I want to start by asking our panelists to give about a 30-second little talk on what their company does, what their company is and what it does, so you can get an idea of the diversity, the breadth of the panel, and what's represented here. Sandy, do you want to start, please?
Sure. I think I'm the token creative on this panel, so I will give you just a little bit of background. I am primarily a film director. I do a lot of TV, I do features, and for the last couple of years, I've been doing a lot of branded content where I come up with an idea, my partner comes up with an idea, we get companies to underwrite those. They have no editorial control, but they want to be associated with the projects. So we sort of in a little unusual model here where the deals are about how we can control the material and still help them get the message they want to get out through our material.
I'm Chad Fitzgerald. As Gary said, I'm a partner at Kinsella, Weitzman, Iser, Kump, and Alderser. We are primarily a litigation boutique in the entertainment industry, but I also do some transactional work, and I have some experience doing that as well. But so I get to sort of see these deals from kind of both the beginning, the formation, and then when things inevitably go bad and you need to sue someone about that. So that's what I can hopefully bring to the table today.
Hi, I'm Harold Brook. I think it was called the founder, I don't know what that means, of The Point Media. We're an entertainment law firm. We represent, we do a lot in television, new media, and some film. We represent producers and production companies in making we do reality and scripted, but in the case for today, it's all long-form programming, pilots and series that are scripted and going to all the new platforms.
My name is Harrison Kordestani, the head of Main Street Films. Our business predominantly right now is producing film and TV, both scripted and unscripted programming. And on the film side, producing for studio releasing. On the distribution side, we're actually scaling back more so than we were before and focusing more so on VOD and day and date releasing of our films.
Hi, my name is Nissim Hassan. I am owner and founder of New Films International. Since 1980, all I do is deals to survive. We're producing and distributing movies, also lately TV series. That's all we do for a living.
Okay, thank you. To Harrison and Nessim, wearing your producer hats now, how do you receive projects? How do projects originate? What are the first deals that you make for projects, and how do you in a procedural sense, go about making them? Do you do them in-house? Do you do them outside? Do you personally make the deals? Do you have staff who will make the deals? Harrison, if you want to start, please.
Yeah, we do directly all the deals. Some of them is going by my CEO, some of them executives that we have. When you are producer here and you start to sell also worldwide, probably you will have like a rain, all those scripts and all those projects that keep coming and everybody's asking money. So we need to have 4 or 5 people reading all those as much as we can, all those scripts and projects, then we start to decide.
Okay, then once you decide, then Harrison, you chime in, please. Once you decide, what's the next step? Once you say, okay, we've read all these scripts, we've found 2 or 3 that we like, Nassim, what's your next step?
Next step, if we like it, then we put together the finance, how we can finance and how we can get through all those agents and directors and maybe some additional producers that we need. Then we greenlight the project if everything go well, and we start to put together casting.
Okay, Harrison?
In terms of actually sourcing product, it really depends, both on, depends between film and television. On the film side, what we've been focused on is just starting in the last few months, homegrown batch of development of projects, bringing in young writers who we really love, that we want to just kind of develop homegrown ideas between myself, my partners, and our staff. When we really maybe even see current events or something like that, that's a smaller part of what we're doing, and we haven't started actually producing any of those, but we're getting into healthy development of those kind of projects. And then outside of that, we are really focused on the talent. And so a lot of times, like almost everything we're working on right now, the talent came to us personally because of relationships between myself, my partners, and some of the key heads in the company. They come to us and say, before we go out to anywhere else, can you guys do this for us? And time and again, we've been able to do that. So it's fresh in terms of the marketplace. It's not like it's been shopped everywhere. And we love that. And then finally, we do the same thing everyone else does. We get a call from agencies 2 weeks before AFM, like now, and say, oh, we've got a hot package for you. But the reality is, by the time it gets to us, it means that a lot of people have already said no to it in terms of studios and the top companies, which I'm not offended by. We're a new company, and we know our place in the pecking order. So it's all our chance to find that material that we feel that it was absolutely a mistake for certain bigger boys to have passed on. Mm-hmm. So, but definitely not picking the stuff that obviously is just a baby, like a personal thing for one of the talent, and ultimately doesn't have the commercial value that, of course, all the agents are going to have you believe it does. So that's on the film side. And on the TV side, we've been partnered with the top television company. In fact, I have a few people from our marketing and PR departments here, as they were giving another panel, and I'm not allowed to talk about some of these things, but I can talk about the fact that we're partnering with the top company that we'll be able to announce soon. And frankly, from them, everything just comes from them, because we don't know what we don't know about TV, and they know everything about TV. And the relationship is amazing, and it's actually based on long-running relationships. So right now we're leaning on them to bring the right projects forward.
So in the film area, if you see a project you like that somebody brings to you, what's the next step? Will you immediately try to option the script or purchase it or get a shopping agreement, or what's your process?
I think in today's market, a shopping agreement feels good if the product isn't packaged, and that's some things don't come to us packaged. But if something is packaged, ready to go, and we feel that the key element, a director or an actor, something is strong enough to be an anchor for the film to really draw other talent, we try to move right into production and try to give it a date, figure out what the realities and timelines are for that key talent, and then back into surrounding them with other people who are available at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Does everybody here know what a shopping agreement is? Is there anybody who does not know what a shopping agreement is? It's basically an agreement that lets a producer take a project and shop it without having to pay money usually, and you're attached to it. So that's, generally it's a low risk way for a producer to try to get a project out there to see if there's interest. So you're saying, Harrison, you'll start with that sometimes and see if you can put the rest of the package together?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like somewhat disingenuous. We don't want to mess with anyone's time. We don't want to screw with people's hard work. If we feel that if something hasn't been packaged and we grab it and very short, our shopping agreements are very, very short term, maybe no more than a month or two. If we go into marketplace to agencies and try to package something and it just feels like it doesn't have traction, we can't waste our time or the actor, the other writer, director, producer, whoever's brought it to us. But then again, if it does move, we're quick to follow in it, behind it and actually make the film. And we've been doing that in this last year and a half that we've been.
So if you have a shopping agreement with someone that's for a month and you find interest within that month period, will you proceed to an option agreement or will you purchase it?
Absolutely. I mean, I feel that you can't, in today's market, the actors are typically so far ahead in terms of the deals that they're making. The bigger the actor, they're 2-3 films ahead. And unless there's a break, financing falls through on something and then they suddenly become available, typically they're not available for 6 months or so. So we plan ahead. Mm-hmm. And we will option it for that period and for successive periods just in case something happens, actors drop out. We all know the same deals. I think it's definitely something we're trying to be proactive to make sure we get our hands on the right projects that we feel are fresh and commercial. But at the same time, we don't want to somehow make the filmmakers think that we've imprisoned them in some web of never-ending options.
Yeah.
So there's usually factors for that. Like if we don't do anything, if we don't put out pair play offers, if we haven't done something like steady forward work for the film, then we don't have we can't stand behind that and actually option it again for what seems to the filmmaker to be an endless process.
Mm-hmm. I think as a deal point, the position that Harrison was talking about with a shopping agreement, maybe doing it for a month or so, and then if they're not able to do anything, not holding the project up, is very fair. You got to be hesitant if somebody wants a shopping agreement for which they don't want to pay anything and they want it for a long, long time. Harold, what's your experience with shopping agreements? Is there a trend towards using them more? Any trend in terms of timeline?
Yeah, I think there's a trend for using them more, especially because it costs less for our clients. You're not negotiating out the whole deal. The other thing is that generally speaking, especially in the television area, you don't know where that show is going to be sold. So, and there are all these different price, each network or each, whatever the buyer is, everybody has a different model on how they deal with things. So there's no one size fits all. So I certainly have been involved in shopping agreements that have taken months, which is insane. But generally speaking, you can plow through those things pretty easily, but it's basically an agreement to agree. And it's usually not controversial at all. And like I said, it saves a lot of time and money for the client.
Okay, thank you. Sandy, you're a director. You direct for television, you directed for film, and you've also directed recently some projects that have not been what would be considered traditional projects. Talk a little bit about how projects come to you in the various areas of your directing work.
Sure. So as a director, I feel like I wear two hats. One hat is as a producer, where I develop content, develop stories that I want to tell, and I'll spend 2-3 years sometimes developing a project. And then the other hat is I get hired as a director. But I find increasingly controlling the content, coming up with the ideas as a filmmaker is sort of where the place that I like to be. And that requires making deals that are unique to those projects. And it's also about control. The more you generate the material, the more control you have over the project. In the last couple of years, I've also been working with a lot of big companies to help underwrite the projects that I do. And we have an unusual model just based on the record of the projects that we've done, where we get them to underwrite a project, but they have no editorial or creative control. They just want to be associated with the project. And so
how does that originate? How does that deal-making process work?
We come to them with an idea. We show them what we've done with some of those past projects and the exposure and press that they've gotten. And then they're free to sign on terms of those terms. They're pretty straightforward agreements. A little bit about how much use they get to use of the project and how they get to use it afterwards. But by and large, we're partners with them, but we control the material, we control the content, and then we work with them on PR when the projects are done.
Will they own it or will you own it?
We own it.
Okay, so they're hiring you, they're paying you money to make it, and then they're licensing certain rights from you?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, all right, good.
But I'm wondering, Sandy, real quick, is there an agency or someone that's actually sourcing that and saying, hey, listen, I know your last project was a Cisco, was done for Cisco for big data, and I'm really interested to hear more. But like, is there somebody that says, well, Sandy, Cisco's looking for a big data project?
I wish there was.
Okay.
I mean, I have an agent and a manager for all my television work.
Yeah.
But there's nobody in that field that's our knocking on the door.
So you just have to knock on the door and be like, I've seen what's happening at the company. I think that you'd be interested in
Right,
this.
and we're doing this project, which might be of interest to you, and this is what we've done before, and it's usually we get in at the pretty high level. You actually have to get right at the very top,
Sure.
because they can make the decision in a moment, as opposed to when we've done it on lower levels, like the PR people, it's endless circle where you get nothing done. But if you can go at the very top, then more likely you'll have that. I've had people basically after a meeting sign a check for a lot of money just because they don't have to go through their own people. They can make those decisions.
Really
So whenever you can, you want to get to the decision makers. That's really critical. And then the legal team comes on to kind of make the deal formal. But at that point, it's pretty spelled out about what they want.
That's great.
And in some cases, it's places like Cisco or Intel, but also I work with a lot of foundations and NGOs and foundations of companies. Again, it's a whole different structure. We're producing content for them, but it's not through the ad department. It's through the foundation department or the CSR, the corporate social responsibility department. And again, they have more leverage and they can say yes much faster than the ad people can.
That's great.
So that's a little bit different type of a project. That's where a company is funding a project for their own purposes, and it's a moderately new way to get certain kinds of projects made. But in doing it, I would caution that it helps to have somebody with the track record of Sandy or somebody like him attached, because when you go to a company to sell an idea and say, I want you to give me a lot of money, they're going to want to be convinced that you can do it and you can do it in a way that's going to look good. So they're going to say, who's involved with this? So it helps to have a good track record, or if you're starting out, it helps to be partnered with somebody who can execute your idea. Chad, as a litigator in this space, you see a lot of these deals when they go bad.
Yes.
Are there certain specific things that you can point to that people can look out for when doing, so the question isn't terribly vague or terribly more vague than it already is. Can you hone in maybe on kind of option purchase types agreements, doing deals with producers? Are there certain things that people should be on the lookout for as either producers or writers or rights owners?
Yeah, I can try. And I apologize, I'm losing my voice a little bit, so hopefully everyone can understand. The agreements we've been talking about, like shopping agreements or even options, it's sort of hard to get involved in litigation about those agreements because I think, like you said, they're sort of agreements to agree. And the performance of those agreements, it's kind of hard to say if someone has breached that promise to reach a further agreement. But where the meat always is the money and the monetary terms. And often what we usually see is that something will be optioned and maybe even developed, and somewhere along the line, an obligation of the studio to either properly account for money or to pay it at a certain time or upon certain conditions. That's what, I represent talent, so I can say that's what gets breached. And that's where really we come in at that point. So it's one of 2 points on the time frame. It's either at the beginning or often it's at the end in success when a project is generating money, and then a whole host of issues come into play about whether they are properly accounting for that money, properly dealing with all the parties they need to deal with about that money.
Okay.
I hope that's helpful.
No, that's good. Another area that a lot of people may come across in their careers that Chad, will start with you, and then Harold and anybody else can weigh in on, is the area of submitting a project. There getting past the fact that there's certain companies that won't accept a project unless it comes into an agent or a entertainment attorney. How do you deal with the whole issue of showing somebody a script? As a writer, you're concerned that you're giving away your idea to a company. As the company, you're concerned that you don't want somebody accusing you of stealing an idea. Is there a solution, or do you ultimately, at the end of the day, have to take some kind of a chance?
That's a great question. We see that a lot. My advice, the free legal advice would be don't submit an idea without that kind of sort of backup behind you, or of like an agent or a lawyer, or at least with signing. A lot of companies will make you sign. I don't know if you guys do this, but will make people sign for unsolicited submissions, sort of in a simple one-page agreement that says, look, we don't owe you anything by reading your script. Unfortunately, what we see time and again, and it's sort of a sad truth in Hollywood and the world, is that ideas are kind of worthless. It's the execution of the idea. Ideas are a dime a dozen. If you write a script about someone who moves to a new town, that isn't a monopoly on that idea, right? It's how you put it into play. It's how you execute it, and that's what's valuable. So a lot of times people will call us saying, look, I have this script, and they even go through the real process. So I have this script, I had a meeting, I submitted it, they were interested, then they passed, and a year later, lo and behold, a movie gets made that's an awful lot like my script. And it's hard for us, but I would say 99 out of 100 times have to say, you know what, I'm sorry, you don't have a case, because there wasn't an agreement signed that protects you or protects the studio, and the two projects are not substantially similar enough to merit a litigation, which is insanely costly, and it would probably be lost anyway. So I mean, yeah, that comes up. I don't want to veer off the topic, but yeah, it's a very, very tricky situation to navigate, and I would say that it's almost impossible. I'd love to hear from the producers, but I think it's almost impossible to submit without having some sort of bona fides of an agent or a lawyer behind you, sort of giving it to you. I'd actually be interested to hear if you guys even accept unsolicited ideas or pitches. Do you guys hear like?
First, I think that it's something that's actually a pain in the ass to deal with.
Yeah,
things are being sent every single day, and you kind of I don't even reply to them anymore,
sure.
Except I think one of the things is that we need to obviously be on top of replying to them and saying that we're not using or something. But going back, Gary, is to like really understanding like what people should do in terms of submissions. I think I completely agree with Chad that ideas by themselves without execution are nothing. And I tend to believe that writers are part of a creative trio, obviously, of a writer and director and actors, bringing that to life. And I would encourage writers to seek out directors and maybe even befriending talent and kind of pre-packaging something before sending it. It makes it so much more viable as producer or distributor for me to get something that feels somewhat packaged than here's my script, here it is. And that to me, it's like feels like I've got to do so much work. I've got 20 other things I've already enlisted to do work on. So why should I pick up another rock and put it in the bale? Mm-hmm. Where, I feel that if someone suddenly came with something very interesting, or maybe made a little short around, a scene in it or something, just to take it out of its norm, then I would pay attention to it and maybe put it, have them sign something and take the interest to read it.
But if you have them sign something, more often than not, it's going to say, we may have something like this in development already. You agree that you're not going to come after us if we produce something that is similar that we've had in development.
All of those say that.
Yeah, and there's not
doesn't
really
Doesn't
a way
mean
around it.
anything.
Doesn't
but
stop
it doesn't mean
anybody.
anything.
Yeah.
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 Every one of them says that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell clients, because I've represented writers who wanted to pitch projects to producers, and generally I actually won't, because I'm not a person. Our firm doesn't pitch projects. So I'll more often than not tell the client to go and find an agent or a manager or somebody like that can do it. because I've seen on the other side representing producers how, almost anyone can send that email or a letter saying, I'm the lawyer for. It doesn't, there's one thing to get it from a big law firm or established lawyers or whatever, but, it doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah.
And, there's, having spent so much time in-house at both NBC and CBS and even studios, there's this whole thing going to litigation and not at all disparaging you who work with. But the bottom line is, in success, there are a lot of fathers. I mean, every single successful show that I was involved with at NBC, there were lawsuits, and mostly submission lawsuits. And in failure, it's an orphan. Right. And that's a big thing that goes on all the time. What I will say at times, that at a minimum, I'll say to clients who want to pitch, just make sure you have something registered with the WGA. Right. It's a timestamp. That's all it is. But just have something there. That doesn't mean anything, because ultimately, and we're not talking about anyone here in the panel or legitimate people. If somebody wants to steal something, they will steal something. It doesn't matter.
Right.
And with the percentage of failure, people will just do it. I mean, they will come in. I've seen it, again, on behalf of clients, producers, where, client will call me, producer will call me and go, look, we got something like this pitched a month ago. We didn't do anything there too. And I said, great, you're not doing anything here either. So it is a constant battle to try to, that's just a very tough thing to do. And producers, you were saying, it takes a lot of time to go through this. And you really have to send, when you're dealing with this, you do have to respond and tell them it hasn't been opened and yada, yada, yada. So,
And Harrison, I was going to ask you, in that email reply, do you say I'm deleting what you sent me? Yeah.
I have done that before.
Yeah.
And note to self.
Yeah. It's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't, in a legal sense, I don't think it really matters whether your project is submitted by an agent or a lawyer. It doesn't change the copyright laws. No. But but companies won't often accept a project without that. But it doesn't legally give that company any additional security. Nassim, do you accept projects, or do they have to come through people you know?
Mostly people that we know will be feeling like more secure to that. But sometimes there is another risky angle from the other part is sometimes the deal come to you, and of course unions is involved, and you become like option one director or producer, and then you go to second person and third person, all of them if it's from the union. In the meantime, you don't want to lose one of the actor, for example. You're doing pay or play. As soon as you do pay or play, trick all the deals entirely. You need to pay entirely all the union members. No matter what option doesn't matter. The deal is deal. Already becoming like in the middle of the deal. Just one person, if you pay or play, pay them. I mean, I'm sure that attorneys and lawyers know better than I do, but happened a couple of times to us. Even if we did in the movie, we paid all of them, and then we give up the project, or you pay and continue to do it.
Yeah.
If I could tell a non-legal story for a second. As a director, I'm always looking for material, and writers are often giving me material. And when I first moved to California, I lived in the Hollywood Hills, and a friend of mine was visiting from Minnesota, and I went out for a jog, and I came back carrying 2 scripts. And he said, "You went jogging. Where did those come from?" And I said, "Well, I ran into people that I knew, and they said they hadn't seen me for a while, and they wanted to give me their scripts." And so there's another way that material comes to us. And there is, the flip side of that is that, as producers, I'm looking for material, you're looking for material, but you want it to come in a way that you can process it. But that's part of the interchange of Hollywood. That's part of the life we live, where it's often the people you work with, that you collaborate with, or that somebody knows somebody who's got a project. I welcome that. I look for that, particularly if they're good.
Yeah. But if your friends are writers, you're just going to hear about how such and such a company stole my idea. But remember what Harold said. When he was at NBC and CBS, for every successful show, there were people coming out of the woodwork saying the producer stole their idea. And usually that's not the case. It happens, but it's not really the norm, I don't think. Correct me if I'm wrong. But the point there is just each side has reason to feel the way they do. So nobody is inherently trying to cheat each other by being tough about it. You just have to work around it and ultimately take a chance. And as Harrison said, if you can package some things or do it a little bit differently so it stands out from the crowd, it's an easier way of getting somebody to look at the project. But you have to accept that at the end of the day, you're putting it out there, and if someone really wants to steal it, they can come up with a way to do it, but you'll never get your stuff out there if that's the primary focus. We've talked a bit about kind of optioning, purchasing, shopping deals and the like, all of which are hallmarks of traditional deals, also hallmarks of some non-traditional deals. But I want to move a little bit to the new media area, because new media comes into play. It provides an added way of either getting projects made or getting money for projects, whether it's video on demand or subscription video on demand, or the whole Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, Xbox model. So I want to ask the panel, and anybody can address this, or everybody can address this. How has the advent of new media and the new media deals changed the nature of your deal-making process at the various steps along the way?
Well, I think you have to go take a look at what the traditional model used to be first. Traditional model, especially network model, and cable comes into this after, was a studio. A writer submits a project to a studio likes it. Studio goes to a network, says this, shows them the concept. Network says, okay, we're buying it. Go develop the script. The writer goes back, writes the script, they develop it together. Then they go to the network, and if the network likes it, network makes a deal for just the broadcast rights, made a deal just for the broadcast rights in the U.S. territory and possessions and whatever territories. And that was it. It was for a limited 4-year term. And after that term, you renegotiated the deal, although, again, in raving success, everyone came back after year 2. And then when the 4 years was up, if the show didn't get picked up again, or whenever the term was over, the studio then they owned the copyright, they owned the material, then they went out and sold all of these reruns to usually local stations across the country, or cabled when they used to show repeats. The model has really blown up for a lot of different reasons as it's moved forward. Unfortunately, one that I was involved with when we renegotiated the deal for ER after 4 years, and it sort of went on the marketplace. The number went up to an astronomical during the negotiation. I mean, it was $13 million an episode, and I'm not speaking out of school, and which I think it had been 1.5. So the free marketplace took over for that, and what the industry reacted to then was to get a longer term, so they would get 6 years, or a lot of the networks said, okay, we're not getting caught this way, we're going to become your co-producing partner on shows, and that happened. A lot of that happened. So little by little, all of those things started to erode. And now you add in this next mix, which is the new media. Networks never touched anything other than their forte, which was broadcast rights in their territory. And now I call it a land grab, because that's really what it is now. Everybody's trying to get as many rights as they can. And the big thing that networks are saying, and even though they're paying standard license fees as they did before, they're basically saying, we want SVOD rights. And we're not going to share with you any of that money. On the argument that, audiences have been deteriorating on network television, so many other ways to get this material. This is another way for us to make money because we're losing money on the advertising side, which, if you look at the numbers, isn't true.
Yeah.
I'm very schizophrenic on how I deal with this, since I represent talent, studios, and networks. So, anyway, it does change the model. I mean, it changes the model when you're dealing with original programs for networks, or the traditional networks, cable. And now that there are all of these other, however you want to call them, digital platforms or whatever else, everything's shook up. I mean, it's been shaken up. And I'm really talking more from a standpoint of long form, pilot series scripted type things. The clients I have are doing scripted programming for the Netflixes of the world, the Amazons of the world, the Hulus of the world, Yahoo, and these places are paying top dollar. And in some cases, either they're paying 100% of the, I think we were talking here at one point, they're paying 100% of the budget, in which case they control everything. Or if they're paying some percentage less, then you're dividing up you're dividing up territories, you're dividing up rights, you're sharing revenue. These were things that were never talked about before when it was a much smaller, compact world. So I do think that, again, going back to the land grab thing, nobody wants to look like the idiot 5 years from now, or actually 2 years from now, that didn't get all the rights they were able to get. And you're seeing it now. There were certain people that were ahead of the curve 2 years ago, 5 years ago. And now you see there are also a bunch of people who have been behind the curve and are overreaching. And it's exciting, but it's also aggravating. And it's really hard to tell clients who are used to, again, the old model or an oldish version of the model, that they're now going to have to give up certain rights without getting any additional money. Because subscription, while it's not the biggest thing, there's certainly opportunities that none of us know that are going to come up, and they're not going to see a penny. And that's a big frustrating thing for a lot of my clients.
Is there a difference between a deal to fully fund a show for a producer if they do the deal with a studio that has a network attached, or a Yahoo or an Amazon? In other words, if the show costs $100 and whether it's Amazon or NBC Studios, they're going to pay $100 for the show when they want to own it. From the producer standpoint, is there a difference in the deal?
If I could add something here, we're in the middle of selling a movie right now. And as a filmmaker, we certainly have a lot of options. Who's handling foreign, who's handling educational, who's handling video demand, and all those companies actually overlap those rights. And as a filmmaker, you have to decide who do you want, you almost cherry pick. Who do you want to handle which particular markets? And do you want your educational distributor selling to Netflix, or do you want your semi-theatrical selling to Netflix? And at what point do you make those sales? So it's actually made the field much more complicated because there's a lot more deals to be made. It used to be a one-shop. As a filmmaker, we'd sell to one distributor, and they would take theatrical and they would take television or sell foreign. But now we're finding that, in fact, you have many more choices, and you have to kind of strategically plan who do you want to have which market.
I think that's more, is this for a feature?
It's a feature doc.
Yeah, because I think it's much different. I do think it's less so. And
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, I think in feature that movie, I think in TV, it's the reverse of that almost, where these companies are trying to, as you were speaking about the proliferation of all these different ways you can watch the content.
Right.
I found that a lot of the companies that do television are trying to consolidate and control as many of those as they possibly can.
But as lawyers, you try to separate those rights because you get more money by selling them separately?
You can, but it's a negotiation, but it's very hard to do. I mean, I think we had talked about sort of an overall, what is leverage? Leverage is two things. One is the ability to say no and walk away from the table. And the other is to have multiple bids.
Yeah.
That's how you get leverage. I mean, it's really that simple. And in some cases you can negotiate and get things, and in others you can't. I mean, I represented a client who just did a very big deal with a network, A-level talent, everything you can imagine. And we couldn't get much. It was insane. I mean, it was really insane. And I begged my client to back out of the deal and go sell it somewhere else or get interest somewhere else, which they would have gotten, but they didn't do that. So it's tough. It really is tough to do that ability that TV movie producers and others did before, that were able to cobble together. Okay, I got a license fee here. I'm selling international here. I'm selling video over here. Somebody's going to take this. Germany goes here. It's tough. It really is tough. It's a negotiation, but generally speaking, it's a negotiation.
Yeah.
Harrison, how has new media affected your business in terms of financing or windows and the like?
Well, it's definitely a core part of our business now. And whereas it wasn't about 6 months ago, we got into a deal with one of the majors, and we're we're actually in the process of renegotiating that deal. But we made a TV show outside of their typical model, where essentially they had run out of financing for that period of those shows, and we actually financed it. And we've now come at odds as to how that show will proceed into series. And it really kind of woke us up to that entire side. And I personally think, and while we'll find a good home for that show, I think that in fact we're negotiating with the competition to that other company. And frankly, if anyone knows anyone knows about our company's history, they know what I'm talking about. But I just didn't want to embarrass one company and say we're walking away to another one. But it's made us really aware of how important making content for the internet providers are, because that's where people choose to watch more of their entertainment on a daily basis. I mean, we saw it this summer, and I think I think there'll be an anomaly in summer 2015. I actually think it'll be the biggest summer theatrically in a long time, because there's everything from Star Wars to another Avengers to everything. But 2016 will correct that, where it'll show that not many people are mostly going for event-based films, and people are getting amazing programming at home. I get, my drama, I get at home on all the different shows. Like you can't get better than Game of Thrones and whatever else. And it used to be from watching movies. So I think now we're actually switching that model and very, very mindfully creating content for the internet providers and as Harold was saying, I mean, just in the last week, and to go on to what you were saying, just in the last week, HBO, Starz, Showtime, CBS, everyone announced they're doing competitive channels to Netflix. So a lot of these shows that they've been actually licensing out to the Netflixes and the Hulus or whatever, they'll take in-house and actually make a competing channel. So for the short term, there's going to be all these competing channels. And then in a couple of years, when they realize that they should combine or consolidate, it'll go back in maybe 5 to 10 years or something. But for the short term, there's going to be a lot of different creative teams looking for products. Absolutely. And so I think it's a bonanza right now.
Yeah, actually, right now, not going to the networks is the desirable choice on most creatives.
That's right.
Going to Hulu, go to Netflix, go to Amazon, and you've got much more license to do what you want, and they're taking more risks.
They're all going to be.
The networks are seeing,
and they're spending comparable money.
They are,
which
and they're hiring.
Which has changed the model.
Exactly.
Do you have more freedom going to not the main players?
Absolutely.
Okay.
In part because they're not as entrenched, and they need you. They need you as a director. They need you as a producer, because it's new territory for them. But I think increasingly we're going to find they're going to become the new networks.
Nassim, are you making anything for the internet?
Yes, and since like 34 years, I'm in this business since 1980. I'm seeing that market changing very dramatically right now, and every 5 years was changing before. Now it's like every year and a half changing. I mean, if you ask me my opinion, like as a distributor company since 34 years, distribution business is almost like dying right now. If you don't produce anything yourself, you cannot distribute, because it's so easy. Before we were buying from this company, selling the other company, and we were making money. Now everybody's going to internet. They know who's the producer. They know who's that in charge, even like to sell that product. Even they closing the deal without seeing each other, without talking each other. They're just saying like, it's available for, Australia. Yes, it is. Okay, how much you want? This much. Okay, fine, send me the agreement. They don't know even each other. But before, we were the only connection. Now there is no connection. Connection finished. Connection is internet. And I think TV channels also is going to have the same problem very soon. Like in 10 years, 15 years, I don't think so. Any TV channel going to broadcast something and going to get like good ratings and money. Because right now, just simple example, my wife trying to watch any TV series, she's buying the TV series while she's broadcasting free in HBO or other channels. And I'm saying like, why you pay like, for example, $24 to watch this while it's, free here? She said, oh, I'm watching from my car, from the airplane when I travel, and from the different countries, because this is like country restrictions, whatever. So it's going to be easy to watch. Otherwise, I'm going to start and I'm going to hold and I'm going to watch like in 3 months again when I come back, for example, from Europe. So it's changing. I mean, slowly but surely. I don't think like we can beat like as a distribution companies or as a television channels with all those internet and new thing, very important, like we signing deal, for example, we saying like VOD. We were signing like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we're signing only VOD rights. Now we're signing SVOD, TVOD, AVOD rights. Even the buyers doesn't know what is AVOD. Do I have AVOD?
What are those?
I don't know if I know what AVOD rights.
What are those?
Excuse me?
What are all those?
What are all those?
Well, I know SVOD, but what's AVOD?
Yeah, I mean, SVOD is, like a subscriptional VOD.
Right.
TVOD is like a transactional VOD.
Right.
AVOD is totally new thing right now come up, which is like the...
Like Hulu.
Exactly.
Advertiser-based.
Yes.
Where
Like-
you watch like
E-
three advertisers.
Exactly. So it's like totally different. And now people asking like, do you have a mobile rights? Mobile rights? We're saying, like, yeah, as we produce, probably we have. Like,
Sure.
Can you imagine like what your buyer's thinking? Because sometimes buyer buying like they trying to buy, let's say Germany, all rights, but we're not putting all rights in the agreement because let's say, I mean, attorneys or lawyers companies or legal advisor, they said, okay, we're giving theatrical, video, and television. That's our deal. Before was all rights. Now we're selling them theatrical, video, television. They come back to us after 3 years. They said, I bought all rights, but you're selling VOD rights. We said, it's not writing VOD rights in your agreement.
Yeah.
They said, doesn't exist at that time. It's sure, I mean, true, doesn't exist. Now they feel like they have the rights. We feel, or legally, we have rights, so we can start to sell it. And also, very famous thing right now came in the market is non-exclusive SVOD rights. So they feel like they're buying something, which they do, but you can sell the same time to someone else. It's very funny. Like 2 weeks ago, we just finished one deal in Brazil, for example. It's our clients for 15 years. They said like they want to buy SVOD rights. We said, okay, we can sell it to you, but non-exclusively. We sold. They signed. But the same time, other company came to us and said like, we want to have like SVOD rights too. So the first company that bought came to us and said, you cannot sell SVOD in the same country. I said, there's not such a regulation, like non-exclusive is non-exclusive. I can sell as much as I want. He said, none in my country, it's other countries. Who told that? Brazilian lawyers, okay? I mean, nonsense. But
Well, do you think the market will evolve to where, in a deal-making sense, you can sell exclusive SVOD rights to one company and transactional VOD rights to another company?
yes, you can. Totally different.
And how do you window those? Are they simultaneous windows or?
Some of them, they need windows. Some of them, they don't need windows. For example, when you said iTunes is like TVOD because transactional, as much as they click, they pay money, it's TVOD. At the same time, sometimes you can give SVOD, which is Netflix, for example, or AVOD like Hulu, as you said, for example. So you can sell 3 of them at the same time, as much as they don't put holdback.
Mhm.
Like, for example, when you said pay TV before, HBO put holdback. Say like 18 months and 3 months like a black period that you cannot sell, even the rights expire. But here it's so complicated, they don't know how they're gonna hold back. Some of them they do, but some of them no.
Are there people who don't or are not familiar with the concept of windows or holdbacks or exclusivity? Or does everybody know what that means? Holdbacks are, in the example given, if you go to HBO and it's a pay TV deal with an 18-month holdback, it means you can't sell it to anybody else during that 18-month period. And one interesting question is, will the kinds of holdbacks change? Can you sell it to an HBO or can you sell it to somebody for an 18-month period and say, okay, we agree to hold back against free television, but we want to be able to make a video on demand deal during that time period. Does anybody have any
Leverage.
Yeah,
leverage again?
it's a negotiation, isn't
Okay.
it?
Yeah. Chad, in terms of talking about all these new media platforms that didn't used to exist, and Nassim referred to making deals for new media that didn't exist 3 or 4 years ago, and questions coming up about whether or not they have those rights. Have you gotten involved in litigation where there's an issue about whether somebody has rights because a deal 25 years ago maybe just gave the producer the right to sell something to TV, and now what is TV, and then how do those things go?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially with when streaming VOD started happening, I mean, the big debate among all the lawyers in town, well, what is it, like the iTunes example, like, is that TV or is it video? That was the huge, and it really hasn't been settled yet, but it depends how you account, whether there's different, distribution fees associated with that. So it impacts the money in a big way. And it's still sort of being hashed out. There hasn't been like a definitive answer. It seems like the industry is going towards its TV, but it's very kind of the Wild West. So
There is one more funny thing also in the deals, let's say. We're buying all rights. Now we change, of course, the lawyers like adding more and more, saying like not worldwide, because worldwide is not enough. We're saying all universe, all right existing, and all right is going to come in the future.
Or hereafter created.
And all electronic, non-electronic, right now we know, we don't know, including this deal. Even with this, you cannot imagine, like after 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, now regular movies or regular TV series can change to the 3D. Someone sue us. They said like, you have all rights, all universe, all electronic, all whatever, but you don't have a 3D rights. That's totally different. And our lawyer said they're right, because you're reproducing something from the beginning, like you changing the picture. For example, they saying that if it's knife is in the screen, now knife is in your nose. So it's different production. So you're producing them, but it's real. Now we're adding also 3D, 4D, 5D, whatever D is gonna come. So we'll see what else is gonna come new.
And when they come, it'll be known as D-Day.
Yeah.
When all of you start in a negotiation, is there generally one person representing the other side who you deal with? Is it a lawyer? Is it an agent? And do you have to go through multiple layers for the same deal? Do you have to go through an agent, then a lawyer? Do points get changed along the way? Talk a little bit about that.
Best thing is to deal with a lawyer or lawyer firm. At least they know what they're talking. At least you know that you're gonna get something totally legit. If you talk with the agent, God knows what lawyer's gonna add after agent finish. Because you don't know, like you dealing with saying like, okay, that much money, this one, that one, then they saying, oh, we did not talk about like pension and whatever the additional thing that all the unions need, for example. So lawyers add all the stuff and top and top and top. You finish deal, let's say $500,000, but when you talk with the lawyers, you end up like $700,000. So better if you know in the beginning and deal with the lawyers, always better. One thing is very important as a deal maker. Don't ever estimate even the receptionist in that company. You don't know how influence can have. Sometimes the big boss go to assistant and say, what do you think about this deal? If assistant says, I didn't like it, doesn't matter how many report and how many executives, how many $1 million makers that say, yes, we want this project. Oh, my assistant didn't like it. She had a very good test. Bye-bye, deals end. So you need to be like from the top and from the bottom. That's how I call to make a deal. So don't underestimate anyone. Just be nice with everyone in the company that you want to make a deal. Then finish deal with the lawyer, not anyone else, because that's the one only that can sign a deal in the end of the day, as far as I know, as a legal affairs or whoever, whatever.
And it sounds like simple advice, but it's very good advice. Be nice to everybody in the company. It doesn't cost you anything, and you never know what influence they have.
Exactly.
I would also add, just educate yourself, particularly if you're not a lawyer. The more you know about the process, the more you know about the choices that you have, things that you want, things that you are willing to give up. The more you know what you need to know, the better deal you're going to get. And not to knock the legal and get that legal. I agree. You have to have, as a filmmaker, you have to have that legal help. Yep. But the more I know, the better versed I am into the decisions they can make.
Better as well. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And as lawyers, as odd as this may seem, we're not always right. So the more you can educate yourself, the more you may be able to correct us and say, what about this?
Time out. We're not always right.
Harold's always right. I'm,
Jeez. Who knew? Litigators are always right.
That's right.
He just made a point of telling you that.
but an educated client is very helpful. Before I ask a couple more questions, since we've got a few minutes left, are there any questions from the audience? Yes, all the way in the back.
Are all those deals being done in English or another language?
I mean, 99.99% is English. Because if you do any other language, anyway, we need to translate to English.
How about in France? Is that the 0.1%, or are they doing deals in English now?
English.
Okay.
It seems to be like the language of business internationally. So
Yeah, that helps. Anybody else? Yep.
Clarification on Windows.
Windows are when you can exploit a certain right. Like if you have a show and you sell it for television, the television broadcaster may well say, we don't want anybody else to be able to sell this show while we have our rights. So we want an exclusive window of X years. And then maybe after television, maybe you then syndicate it, where you sell it to a cable channel or you sell it to Netflix or Amazon. That would be considered the second window. And the further away you go from the original broadcast, the less likely it is that the windows have to be exclusive, meaning you may be able to exploit multiple rights during a single window.
But it also starts right from theatrical as well. I mean, a lot of the exhibitors, studios, when they're making deals with exhibitors, if they want to grab at least a couple weekends and believe that they can, they have to promise them that that whatever's that the film's not going to show up on home entertainment before a certain amount of months, and there's no way to actually release that before. And obviously, the people that have are much more interesting to our conversation here. The companies that have tried, releasing all formats on the same day. Perhaps one day it'll go towards that, but right now windows are still really important because theaters at least really want to make sure that people are coming over and sitting their asses down and buying popcorn and drinks and not just watching it at home. So.
And they're interesting models and discussions being done in that area now, because you read every once in a while about a studio that wants to make a day and date deal for a film where they put it out theatrically, but at the same time they want to release it on Netflix or Hulu or something like that. And the theater owners are not happy about that and are pushing back. So it's tried every, a couple of times a year, someone tries to do it and there's pushback, and it's still a work in progress, which makes it more of the change. As Nassim said, things that used to take a couple years to change now are changing regularly. So the distribution models change, the deal making models change. Question, has anybody made, I guess Harrison and Nassim, have you made anything for the internet where you haven't made it pursuant to a pre-sale to an Amazon or a Hulu or like? Is there a business now for producing and funding something and then putting it up on the internet on your site or somebody else's who isn't paying you and trying to make some money through some kind of a revenue share?
I personally don't know that business yet, and I would love to. I mean, obviously would need to have probably an in-house or coordinated with the site that I'm using, whoever I'm partnering with, coordinated with them in terms of their ad sales and how I can actually recoup, let's say, a click per revenue stream for me for actually that motivates me and incentivizes me to make something so good that people want to click on it and watch it. And that's how I actually differentiate my product from other people's, but I haven't gotten there yet. I don't really know, what the value for that is. I mean, the only things we're really creating digitally outside of things that we're selling and actually know where the homes are, more scripted and unscripted format, would be to, have sizzles and trailers and things like that that aren't duplicated anywhere else. They're like, let's say, say we're making a comedy and we have the characters actually do bits that aren't in the movie. And to do that specifically, let's say, and we might have them do things like say, hey Hulu, customers watch it on, whatever, like give it tags. And we've done that. But I don't think we've figured out how to really monetize that.
Yeah. Harold, have you represented anybody who's tried that and who's been successful?
Yeah, I've had some clients who've done it in conjunction with an advertiser. So the advertiser is paid for it. It's run on the advertiser's website, or the advertiser, the product shows prominently, and then it packaged together and then turned it, went to a Netflix or Amazon or Hulu or one of those and have sold it. But there's not been a significant revenue stream coming from that.
I think it was interesting. A couple of years ago, there were quite a few web series being done. I did one for NBC and did another for Alloy, and now there's more of a move to do long form. I mean, I think again we're in such an early stage of this with video on demand and also creating channels for YouTube. I was in this room 2 years ago, and Maker Studios was just beginning. A year and a half later, they were doing shows for $250 an episode. We were spending $750 for a series at NBC, and those are the ones, and they took off, and sold for $40 million. That's where the future is. I mean, I think we all feel that television, as we know it, is a dinosaur and is in the middle of unraveling completely.
Let's, in the couple minutes that we have left, if there are no more questions, let's switch a little bit and talk about some deals in the reality space, since that's a big part of television. Harold, Chad, you may have had some involvement in that. I don't know if others have or not, but talk a little bit about the growth of reality and the change of reality in terms of deals. And by deals there, I mean deals with the talent for shows, deals with producers for shows, whether networks want ownership of the show, whether as a producer you can retain ownership of the show, and how distribution works. And that's an hour and a half seminar in itself, but you have about 5 or 10 minutes.
How about 4?
4 minutes, that's good.
Reality program used to be very cheap. So people, again, going back in time, it was filler, or it was all on cable. And as time went on, I mean, reality program to a large degree, certainly when my clients are doing it, people are spending a lot of money for this now. So it's across the board. The networks for a while owned that space. They've now backed off. It's back to cable generally. Again, reasonable license fees, the deals you're making for talent. I mean, it's not a lot of money at the end of the day. I mean, it's the reality of all of this is that, they get you in for the first year or two, as far as talent comes in for the first year or two, and in success, they all come back. We've seen it with the Kardashians. We've seen it with Cake Boss. We've seen it with the Jersey, Shore guys. That's what really happens. That's when, Duck Dynasty, all those guys, that's when you can make money. But at the beginning of the networks, unless you are prepared to deficit part of the show, and not, in other words, if the network picks up 100% of your budget, they own everything. You have no choice. If you pick up less, usually it's like around a 70% model, then you can start negotiating out for other territories. But the reality is most, no pun intended, is that most shows don't have an afterlife. They're very centric. I mean, I don't know how some of these other shows have done internationally, but the majority of shows really don't have much of an international play afterwards. Certainly they don't have plays as far as repeats. And they generally don't have plays as far as any kind of, whether it was on DVD or anything else.
Right. Nassim?
Yeah, if reality shows like
Back to Chad.
totally different subject. We already did one reality show, one of the countries. Whoever gonna make reality show, I think they need to think different way if they want to make money, because you're making famous the show and the people. When the people is very famous in your show, going the next network, doing another thing, so you make them famous and you start to share the audience, because half of them gonna watch your show, half of them gonna watch next show. So you need to be sure that you have also agreement with all the talent that they cannot make any other show until this show totally expire or finished. At that time, you start to make money, because we did the same thing. People become so famous, they quit from the show all of a sudden. You don't have any penalty. You cannot, punish them. They quit from the show. They start to make a show in the next, TV station. Then you don't know what you need to do. But if you have also talent agreement with them, which is different. For example, you becoming in my show as a contest or whoever, or gonna be acting or hosting, let's say. You need to tell them anything else that you're gonna do, it's belong to us for 2 years or 3 years. Then it's fine. Even if they go next show, they need to pay you penalties. So mostly they're not going, and you keeping them in your show actually.
Yeah, yeah.
One
Chad,
other-
you, I mean,
Oh,
Chad,
just
you
one
wanna
quick
add
thing.
anything?
The other
Oh.
thing is that what the networks are also doing, cable, is they're asking for a piece of the uptick. Their argument being, we're giving you one commercial for your company. And again, it depends on the show. We want a piece of the uptick, which is always a fun thing to try to figure out, how much better you're doing because of the show. And then they also want pieces of if you take your business like Cake Boss and you open up a limo company or a party planning company, they want pieces of all of that too.
Yeah, and that's a moderately new development that's not particularly fun if you're representing the producer, but it's there.
No,
Um,
not fun.
Chad, you want to?
No, I was just going to add, I agree, there's not many ways to make money on reality, but one of the interesting ways I've found, I don't know if you have, is selling format rights. If you have a show that's repeatable, a lot of shows won't translate into the foreign market, like Nassim was saying, but maybe the format will if you put foreign hosts and contestants and actors in it. If you encounter that, and that seems to be a big part of the deals I've seen for reality.
Yeah.
And that's where you make a lot, if not most of your money, if you're able to get that.
Just sort of repeating it, like making new widgets for foreign territories.
Are you finding that broadcasters are receptive to deficit financing model with the reality shows, or are they generally pushing to own the whole thing?
Oh, I thought you were going to.
Oh, it's-
No,
Anybody?
we in fact are doing that. We're doing several different ones, but in one case, one of the networks, not cablers, and I was very surprised that they were very open to it. I think it was more because of the relationship that they had with the TV partners that we have, having made previous shows with them and have personal relationships with them. But they're allowing us to come in with a significant part of the finance. But we are getting not only ad revenue, but we're also getting foreign rights, but they're also getting foreign rights. But I'm just saying bigger chunk than they would have, and all those different things. Where I just always thought there was only one model. Or back in the day, I just thought when you're making these shows in television, you just have to have the perfect pitch, and you have to be the Uber producer, and then they're just going to pay for everything. And I think that's changed. And I was just shocked that a major was going to come and say, okay, that's interesting, let's move forward. I think everyone's trying to figure out how to save money, whether they're a major company or a smaller company. Everyone's, across the board, whether it's studios or networks, they're all, firing every couple months, 10% of our workforce. Pretty soon it'll be like 10 people working there. Every few months people are cutting because they need to show profit. So I think we're getting into a place, especially because of everything we've been talking about really fractionalizing different modes of the receipt of all this entertainment by the viewer. I think a lot of people are going to try to figure out how to save money, and there's going to be ways to co-invest. So I'm definitely seeing that. But then again, in another show that I don't see the value, really, it's a very American show, and I don't really think that has a lot of international legs. We're just kind of standing back and taking very small. I mean, the monies in reality and unscripted are not very big.
Yeah.
It's just more of a prestige factor for the company and getting busy and getting the team moving forward. But on that show, we don't have any financial stake.
Okay.
So
So it varies. It
Yeah.
varies. There, you can even have an instance where sometimes there'll be an overseas company that'll own a format for a show they've done in their country, and they'll bring it over here, and they'll make a deal with the network, but the network can't own the format because the overseas company already is exploiting that around the world. But the broadcaster will take all rights to the U.S. version of the show, and they can even sell the U.S. version around the world. but they can't sell format rights for that show. So you may have a country where you find American Idol
Like The
being
Office.
sold.
Just
Or-
for example, is it The Office, which was a UK, Ricky Gervais's
Yeah,
show.
so you'll
which-
find the US version of The Office being sold in the same country that the English Ricky Gervais version is being sold. Or American Idol will be sold to an Australian channel at the same time that Australian Idol is airing. And they may be done by different companies. Ultimately, they'll go back to a common ownership, but the individual show may be produced by different entities. So it's always interesting. So I think that takes us to the end of our program. Thank you to the panel. It's been a great panel, very good people. And thank you all for your attention. If you have specific questions now, feel free to come up and talk to the panelists and me. And good luck with all of your endeavors.